When you watch Squid Game, you feel like you're part of a global phenomenon. 111 million viewers, 94 countries, 31 languages. It's everywhere. But Alice in Borderland? Equally brilliant, yet somehow overlooked. So why did Squid Game dominate while Alice in Borderland stayed niche? It's not just marketing. There's a hidden reason no one talks about. To understand why, we need to rewind to a moment in history that, at first glance, has nothing to do with K-dramas, but it changed everything. This one event set off a chain reaction that would redefine the global entertainment industry, and yet, almost no one talks about it. The story doesn't begin in Korea, though. Instead, it starts thousands of kilometers away, in Thailand. July 2nd, 1997. The day everything collapsed. For years, Thailand had been one of Asia's rising stars. Dubbed one of the Asian tiger cubs, it enjoyed rapid economic growth fueled by foreign investment and a booming real estate market. It seemed like an unstoppable success story. But this growth came at a cost. Thailand's government and businesses borrowed heavily in US dollars, while keeping their own currency, the Thai baht, pegged to the dollar. As long as foreign money kept flowing, the system worked. But what happens when that money disappears? On July 2nd, 1997, the money did just that. Spooked by the mounting debt and slow growth of Thailand, foreign investors panicked and pulled out. Thailand had no choice. It had to let the baht collapse. And collapse it did. The baht plunged by more than half, dragging down businesses, banks, and livelihoods. But the crisis didn't stop there. Like a chain reaction, financial panic spread across Asia, starting the panic now known as the Asian financial crisis. And then it reached South Korea. Like Thailand, South Korea seemed unstoppable. Fueled by corporate giants like Samsung and Hyundai, the country was an economic powerhouse and more established than Thailand. It should have been immune to the crisis, right? But South Korea had followed a similar economic model to Thailand. The chaebols. South Korea's massive family-owned conglomerates had expanded rapidly, but they had done so by taking on enormous debt. When the stampede of foreign investors fled, the illusion crumbled. The South Korean won nosedived. The country's foreign reserves drained at an alarming rate. By December 1997, South Korea was on the brink of collapse. With no other options left, they turned to the IMF for a bailout. A staggering $58 billion, the largest IMF rescue in history at the time. But this wasn't just an economic disaster. It was national humiliation. South Korea had built its pride on rapid growth, yet now it was at the mercy of foreign leaders. The country had to rethink everything, its industries, its economy. But what does this have to do with today's streaming wars, you may ask? Well, how the country responded to its crisis would shape all industries, and especially one in particular, entertainment. At the heart of South Korea's transformation, one key figure: Kim Dae-jung. But first, let's delve into the contrasting worlds of K-dramas and J-dramas and how that impacted Squid Game popularity. Both Squid Game and Alice in Borderland are brutal, high-stakes survival thrillers, but only Squid Game became a global cultural juggernaut. Squid Game didn't just capture attention, it infiltrated pop culture. Halloween costumes, viral memes, board games, even language apps. Over 1.6 billion watch hours on Netflix. Meanwhile, Alice in Borderland remained a cult favorite. Why? At first glance, the answer seems obvious. Squid Game isn't just a survival game, it's a mirror. It taps into something primal, the fear of debt, financial ruin, desperation. The contestants aren't just random players, they're people we know. A single mother struggling to keep her child, a migrant worker trying to survive in a foreign country, a failed businessman drowning in loans. Squid Game resonates because its fears are real. But what makes these fears so powerful? It's because they aren't just fiction. They're based on real events. The 2009 SsangYong Motors labor strike, where 2,600 workers were laid off and some were driven to suicide, that's Sang-woo's story. The rising household debt crisis in South Korea, which saw personal loans skyrocket by 43% from 2013 to 2021, that's Gi-hun's nightmare. Squid Game doesn't just entertain, it exposes. It forces us to confront the brutal realities of modern life. But hang on a second. Doesn't Alice in Borderland do something similar? Like Squid Game, it's about survival. But survival means something different here. Instead of being trapped by society, Alice in Borderland traps its players in a game of intellect. Each death game is a test of logic, adaptability, and strategy. The playing card suits symbolize different skills. The story is rooted in existential puzzles, not social struggles. Its world is fascinating, but it doesn't hit as hard emotionally. But are there other reasons Squid Game feels more real? Both shows are visually stunning, so both dystopias should feel immersive, right? Well, not exactly. How they achieve that immersion is completely different. The pastel-colored staircases, the eerie playground sets, the oversized doll in red light, green light. Squid Game's world feels tangible. Every scene feels physical, like the characters are trapped in a nightmare they can't wake up from. But what about Alice in Borderland? It leans on CGI and digital effects. Its post-apocalyptic Tokyo is visually striking. It should feel immersive too, but sometimes it just doesn't. The empty city, the large-scale destruction, it's grand, but also distant. Sometimes it feels more like a video game than a world people are desperately trying to survive in. Squid Game doesn't just show a dangerous world, it makes us feel trapped inside it, like a nightmare we can't wake from. When a world feels real, its stakes do too. That's where audiences forge connections. But what about the characters themselves? In Squid Game, every decision, every betrayal, every death hurts. The marble game, heartbreaking. The final showdown, devastating. Even minor characters leave an impact because their struggles feel deeply personal. Every elimination isn't just another death, it's a tragedy. But how does Alice in Borderland handle this? Its characters are strategists, not survivors. They play to win, to outthink the system. The show is about beating the game, not clinging to life. While we admire their intelligence, we don't always feel their pain. That's the difference. Squid Game taps into visceral human fears. It's survival we can relate to. Alice in Borderland is survival we admire from a distance. Let's now go back to how a single figure reshaped an entire nation's cultural influence. Without him, K-dramas wouldn't be where they are today. Born in 1924 on a small island in Japanese-occupied Korea, Kim Dae-jung grew up in poverty. His path should have been one of struggle, but he was different. A sharp thinker and a gifted speaker, he stood out early. Unlike many of his peers, he excelled academically, made his way into business, and soon discovered his true passion, politics. By the 1950s, he was already a rising star, but this was dangerous. At the time, South Korea was ruled by authoritarian regimes, and Kim Dae-jung wasn't afraid to defy them. He was arrested, kidnapped, and even sentenced to death, but he survived. Years of persecution didn't break him. Instead, they cemented his legacy as a fearless fighter for democracy. And in 1998, as South Korea reeled from its worst financial crisis, he finally became president. His first priority was clear, economic recovery, but amidst this crisis, he saw an opportunity. Kim Dae-jung believed that South Korea couldn't just rely on manufacturing and technology to recover. He looked elsewhere to culture. Inspired by Hollywood's global influence, he had a radical vision: turn South Korean entertainment into a world-class industry. But this wasn't just about selling movies and music. This was about soft power, a way to reshape South Korea's image and expand its global influence. His government established KOCCA, the Korea Creative Content Agency, to fund and promote Korean entertainment. The government backed studios, invested in production quality, and aggressively marketed K-dramas abroad. Then, in the early 2000s, something extraordinary happened. A single drama, Winter Sonata, didn't just become a hit in South Korea. It ignited widespread interest in Korean entertainment across all of Asia. Bae Yongjun, one of its lead actors, became a sensation, especially in Japan. But this wasn't just a TV trend. By 2004, this surge in popularity led to a 35.5% jump in Japanese tourism to South Korea. People weren't just watching K-dramas anymore. They wanted to experience Korea firsthand. And the momentum only grew. From modern love stories like Autumn Fairy Tale to intense thrillers like 10, Korean dramas evolved to match global trends while retaining their unique cultural identity. Fast forward to today, and names like Lee Min-ho and Song Hye-kyo are recognized across continents. But this isn't just about entertainment anymore. The Korean wave reshaped global perceptions of South Korea. By 2009, the Korean wave was growing. South Korea could have simply let it evolve naturally, but what if they could supercharge it? That's when the government took action. They launched the Korean Wave Promotion Policy, an ambitious plan to turn K-dramas and K-pop into global powerhouses. They didn't just support the industry, they strategically engineered its expansion. Film productions, heavily subsidized. Music exports, sponsored and promoted overseas. K-dramas, aggressively marketed to foreign broadcasters. But would this actually work? Within a few years, the results were undeniable. What started as an economic survival strategy became something much bigger, a cultural empire. A country once known for economic turmoil was now shaping the world's music, cinema, and television. And it all started with one bold vision. As a result of Kim Dae-jung's cultural investments, K-dramas are now everywhere. It's not hard to see why. With stunning visuals, meticulous set designs, and carefully crafted aesthetics, every scene feels cinematic, even during its most emotional moments. But why do K-dramas look and feel so different? Ultimately, it's because they operate on a different scale entirely. Numbers don't lie. Your average primetime Japanese drama costs around 30 to 40 million yen per episode, or roughly 270 to 360,000 US dollars. While well-produced, their budgets are modest in the world of high-stakes television. K-dramas can hit $500,000 per episode, sometimes even more. And then there's Squid Game. With a $21.4 million budget, that's around $2.4 million per episode, 4 times the J-drama average, it delivered a visual experience that rivaled Hollywood productions. The difference is obvious on screen. With tighter budgets, J-dramas rely more on stylized storytelling than flashy cinematography or large-scale production values. Alice in Borderland stands out as a bold artistic achievement. But does that make it universally appealing? Not necessarily. That same stylized approach makes J-dramas feel niche. The way they're shot, the way stories unfold, it's not designed to appeal to everyone. While they build cult followings, they rarely achieve global dominance. Steeped in cultural subtleties, tradition, and storytelling methods unique to Japan, they offer a distinct viewing experience. This authenticity should make them stand out globally, right? But J-dramas don't have anywhere near the same worldwide reach as K-dramas do. What makes them unique is also what makes them challenging for global audiences. Why? one key factor is acting style. J-dramas often feature theatrical performances with expressions and dialogue that can feel exaggerated, almost like a stage play. For Japanese audiences, this aligns perfectly with their storytelling traditions. But for international viewers used to naturalistic acting, this can feel jarring. And then there's the influence of anime and manga. Many J-dramas are live-action adaptations of popular series. If you're already a fan, the storytelling feels familiar. But what if you're not? The stylistic choices, pacing, and tone might feel alien or overly niche. As a result, J-dramas often struggle to break into the global mainstream. But does this mean J-dramas are inferior? Not at all. Unlike K-dramas, which focus on high-stakes emotions, sweeping romance, and dramatic pacing, J-dramas excel at quiet, introspective storytelling. But wait, why do K-dramas reach a wider audience then? It's because they hit on universal themes: love, ambition, revenge, all presented in a highly digestible way. Their appeal crosses cultural barriers effortlessly. But is Japan really falling behind? Not exactly, because Japan is not trying to compete. There's a long-standing belief that Japanese media should be made for Japan first. If the rest of the world enjoys it, that's just a bonus, not the goal. Minimal international marketing, fewer aggressive streaming deals, a focus on cultural exports like anime, manga, and video games rather than live-action dramas. While South Korea engineered K-dramas for international success, Japan chooses to focus on its home audience. And that's another reason why J-dramas remain deeply authentic, but also deeply niche. But what if all that's about to change? For decades, J-dramas thrived domestically, with little effort to expand overseas. But Netflix is changing the status quo. Netflix began actively funding and distributing Japanese live-action dramas, giving them global exposure like never before. Alice in Borderland became the first Japanese live-action drama to crack Netflix's top 10 worldwide. It proved that J-dramas could compete on an international level if given the right platform. But will the industry adapt, or will it remain rooted in tradition? The future of J-dramas hinges on this choice.